Mind Over Matter, where we explore the intersection of mental mastery, spiritual strength, and physical vitality. Tonight's guest is Steve McKinney, a fitness pioneer, black belt, pastor, and the best selling author of The Gospel of Fitness. With 30 plus years of experience, Steve's message is clear. Aging isn't something to fear, it's something to own. He is here to break the myth that growing older means growing weaker. Let's dive into grace, muscle, and mindset and learn how to age like a warrior with wisdom.
Love it. Love it. So thank you so much for having me on.
It was a pleasure. So, Steve, what inspired you to write the gospel of fitness and why now? Why this message in this moment?
Well, there's several things with that. The first inspiration for me was my parents died at a very young age, and there was just, in my opinion, they just didn't take care of themselves, and so what that did for me was that inspired me to figure out a way to help others. They died at 49 years old, both of them, and so for me, I wanted to figure out a way to help others and to live just a healthy lifestyle. So how this came about is I'm a personal trainer. I had a personal training studio. I still do. And I started it over 30 years ago. And what I would do when people would come in, I would keep track of everything that they did. I would record their reps, their sets, how often they worked out, how long they should work out. And then I start narrowing it down into a system. And I just figured out what they could do, not just for a short period of time, but for a lifetime. And so that's why I call it a lifestyle of fitness. Now, you asked me why now? And it's really a timing thing. It just kind of came about in just a very unusual way. But I think the timing is really good. And here's why. There's just so much information out on the internet when people look to get in shape, when people are trying to get healthy. If they just type things in, there's so many things that come their way. And there are some programs out there that are not the safest program. And so as you get older, you have to be smart on how you train because you can't do what you did when you were younger. It's just, there's just no way. And really, this starts at about age 35. And so what I do is I tell people, here's what we're going to do. We're going to train your muscles and save your joints because any one joint injury, what that could do is that could ruin you for the rest of your life. So aging gracefully is simply taking care of yourself and fighting back with the problems that we deal with by strength training. And that's the number one thing that's so important because as we get older, we begin to lose that strength and you just see the decline. And so I think the timing is really good because I just look at it also as I'm kind of a rational voice in the middle of a lot of training that is not always the most rational and safest way to approach it. And not trying to set myself apart with that, but I've just learned so much over the years. And at 64, I live it. And so I know how it works. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. So, was there a personal turning point where you realized aging could be empowered, not avoided?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's really important is you have to accept the fact that you're aging, but you also have to fight back. And I'll give you some of the thoughts. So we're dealing with a lot of problems as we age. The first problem is that very thing. We're aging. And that is there's your body changes, your hormones change. All these things are happening. And so that is the first thing we're fighting. But the second thing we fight is what's called sarcopenia. And sarcopenia is age-related muscle loss. And that muscle loss also equals strength loss. And so when you lose your strength, you lose your muscle and vice versa. But that leads us to another problem. When you lose your muscle, what happens is your metabolism begins to slow down because your metabolism is forced by your muscle. And so when that happens, you can eat the same amount of food, but what you notice is you notice a change in your body. You notice fat gain. Your body doesn't look like it used to look. And so that is really important to understand. And then with that, with the loss of muscle, and then you're gaining some body fat, what I'd see people as they age also is they begin to lose their balance, and balance is a big issue. And so keeping the strength up, provided there are no neurological problems, helps keep your balance going forward. And it helps just keep you moving forward. But here's the big one. This is the last thing that we're fighting. When people age, they begin to lose hope. And I don't think life has to be that way. I think that you have to have a purpose for your life. I think that you have to have a community for your life. And then I think you have to have a reason. And then what I mean by that is I have a have a grandson, and I love to be able to spend time with him. One of my longtime clients, and they talk about this guy all the time. His name's Steve. He was the local pharmacist, and he came to me over 30 years ago when I started my business. And I asked him, I said, Steve, what are your goals? And he said, my dad died at 42 years old. And he said, my number one goal is to be able to live long enough to play with my grandchildren. Now, Steve, after 30 plus years, is still with me, and he has 2 grandchildren, and he gets to play with those grandchildren. He's probably 70 years old now. So I look at that, and I chalk that up as a big win for the system that I use in fitness.
That's such a refreshing take. You're showing us aging isn't a decline, it's an evolution.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, and yeah, I think that's really important. And then when it comes to, the thing that happens next is, what do you do with those things that we're fighting? How do you fight back, so to speak? And people go in a variety of different ways, but I'm gonna explain some of the ways, some of the mistakes that people make, and then I'll explain how I solve the problem. But one of the biggest mistakes, and I write about this in the book, I call it going in like a lion and going out like a lamb. And what that means is, and I'll just give you the example for a new year. Every new year, people are, they make this commitment. They're going to get in shape. They're going to lose weight. They're going to work out. And then they go and join a gym. And they're in there 5 days a week, an hour at a time, because they read something on the internet that that's the best way to do it. And to me, that's almost a part-time job. You taking 20 hours of your month, and you're using that for workouts. And so, my solution there is I do what's called short high intensity workouts. My clients train 2 days per week, and I have it all written out in the book. I have a home workout and a gym workout, and it's just a great way to train, but you can just get as good a results, if not better results, in that period of time, because you're gonna feel better, you're gonna rest more. So the number one mistake is going in like a lion and out like a lamb. And the second problem is people lack direction. They don't have a plan. They don't have a way to go about it. And that's what I talk about. I talk about my 3W approach, and I'll explain that in a moment. Um, but having a system and having direction is important. But here's another thing, and I explained this earlier with my friend Steve. It's having goals. And goals are so important. And those goals, they have to be reachable, and they have to be defined. And if someone says, "Hey, I want to come in for a workout," I'm like, "Well, what are your goals?" And they're like, "Well, I just want to lose some weight." Well, that's not a real goal. A real goal says, "Hey, I'm 20 pounds overweight," or "I'm really, really weak. And within 8 weeks, I want to lose 20 pounds," or "within 8 weeks, I want to gain strength." Now, that is a definitive goal. And I think it's really important to have those things. Another mistake that we make is we rely too much on technology. And what I mean by that is, we have all these Fitbits and all these things that are out there, but you have to learn. I mean, technology is important, and I'm not against it, but the things that matter the most are you getting stronger? Are your clothes fitting better? Are you reaching your goals that you set? And so if I have too much information from that technology, it doesn't help me. It almost confuses me, because what we need with our programs in this day and age is we need simplicity. And because like I said, you go look for a program and there's just all these things that you have to do. And so I just tell people the more simple we keep it, the better you're going to do. I don't want you to have to think about a lot of things. We're just going to stay really, really focused. And then having a routine is important. You know, like I said, you have to have a routine. But here's another thing. Sometimes people get way too rigid in what they're doing. And you have to have some flexibility in that. You have to have some flexibility. If something comes up, you can't make a workout, that's not the end of the world. You don't have to stress over those things. You can make adjustments. It's important that you have routines, but it's also important that you also put some time into your schedule for if things don't work out. Now, with all that said, what it comes down to is prioritizing your health, and that is really, really important. When you're looking at getting in shape, when you're looking at getting stronger, when you're looking, to change your body in one way or another, it has to be a priority. That has to be one of the number one things, and we have a lot of priorities in our life, a lot of people to help, but if you can't help yourself and if you can't keep yourself healthy, then you can't help other people. I always tell people this. I'm like, we have a lot of problems in life. Everybody has problems. But when you get sick, you've just now got one problem to solve. And that one problem is solvable for a lot of people. And if you solve that problem, then you can solve other problems or you can help other people. And so I think it's really important that we get programs that work and programs that are safe and that are important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and I can explain now how I solved those problems if you'd like me to.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay. So what I did over the years after I collected that data, I began to look at what could people do? What could they do not for a short period of time, but what could they do for a lifetime? I like to get them started with some goals. Then when we reach the goals, I just say, "Hey, listen, we're going to stay with this for the rest of your life." So here's what I did. I looked at what they were doing and I looked at what the people who stayed consistent, what was the difference with the people who stayed consistent? And so I came up with this plan. It's 2 weight training days per week. Now, sometimes I have people start off with 3 days a week so they can learn the program. Then I cut them down to 2 per week. And the workouts are very short, 15-minute strength training workouts. So that's the first W in my 3W approach is weight training. And an easy way to remember the 3W approach to fitness is when I go to do public speaking or I go to businesses, I just tell people hold up 3 fingers, and if you look at those first 3 fingers, it makes a W. So the first W is weight training. The second W is walking. And now these the way that I approach this, for example, weight training is going to increase your strength, it's going to increase your bone density, it's going to fight against osteoporosis, it's going to help you mentally. It's going to release endorphins in your brain. Proper weight training will help your heart. It releases these things called myokines. And what they are is they're little signals when you lift weights that are positive signals. I'll just put it that way. And these myokines, what they do is they go to other parts of your body. They go to your kidneys, they go to your heart, they go to your liver, and what they say, and they come from your muscle, they come from the workout, and what they say to those organs is they say, "Hey, listen, we're doing something good here. We want you to come in and join the party." So they send out signals to your body. Now, that's what weight training does. But when you look at walking, walking is the second W in my system. And what I suggest for people is I suggest a casual 30-minute walk per day. You don't have to walk fast, just very casual, nice, leisurely walk. Walk outside if you can, because when you walk outside, you get to look at this beautiful creation of an earth that we live in. You can look at the sky, you can breathe fresh air, you can have sunshine, you can, and in the spring, you get to see the leaves on the trees. And what I suggest with my clients is to walk for 30 minutes immediately after dinner. And here's why. There was a study done. The study was done years ago, and the guy, what he did, he measured how many calories you burn and what your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, what it does after these activities. And here were the three activities that they measured. He measured walking, he measured eating and walking, and then he measured walking and eating. And what he concluded after the study was that eating and walking increased your BMR by 25 to 30%, which is profound. I mean, it's really, really important because what you'll notice if you do that, and I do it nearly every day, right after I eat, I like to go out and take a walk on my last meal. If it's too cold outside, I'll use my treadmill. But what you'll notice is you'll notice your digestion is better. You'll notice that mentally you feel better. You'll notice that overall, physically, you feel better. It relieves stress because we have so much stress in our lives. And so we have to look for ways to relieve that stress. And I'm going to go back to my weight training and what I tell people to do when they're weight training. And this is another stress reliever. What I tell them to do is to learn, and this is kind of esoteric, but you learn to connect your mind to your muscle. And what I mean by that is you feel what's happening and you become aware of what's happening in your body. And here's the beauty of that. The beauty of that is you don't think about anything else. So it's kind of a sacred moment, in my opinion, when you go into that gym and when you begin to work, because I believe that God has given us this wonderful gift of a body and we're supposed to take care of it. And so when doing it properly, I'm relieving stress. I'm fulfilling the responsibility that I have of taking care of this beautiful gift of a body that I've been given. And it's important for people to remember that, you know, everybody wants to look good. And I think that's really important. But I think that appearance is part of it, but really the attempt at making your health better is more important because there's a lot of things that go on when you weight train properly, when you walk consistently. There are a lot of things that go on that we don't even see. And then the third W in my program is watching your diet. And the thing with watching your diet is the one thing that I tell my clients is food is medicine for your body. It is so important to eat the proper foods and not to eat processed foods. Try to eat fruits and vegetables and grains and whole foods and nuts and seeds and anything that makes you that is nutritious for you. And so now if I have a client that comes in and they are overweight, and a lot of my clients come in and they say, I gotten out of control with my eating. So what I have them do is I make sure that they measure what they're doing. I make sure that they understand how many calories they're taking in. And then it's really important too, as people age, is to make sure they have a reasonable amount of quality protein. And for women, my general idea for women, I just tell them to set a goal of 70 to 90 grams of protein. And for men, it's 90 to 120 grams. And a lot of it, you can adjust that based on how big you are, how much muscle size that you have. But a lot of times people get overwhelmed by that much protein. They're like, that's so much protein. But think of it like this. If you drink a protein shake generally has about 20 grams in it. A chicken breast, if they eat a chicken breast, the chicken breast has 30 grams in it. So a protein shake and a chicken breast, and you're at 50 grams per day. Now, for me, I eat a lot of, grains that are higher in protein. I'll have, quinoa. I use hemp seeds. Those type of things are another way to increase your protein if you're not a meat eater. Because I don't eat a lot of meat, I don't digest it well. And so I'm always looking for little things. I eat a lot of nuts and almonds and walnuts, which contain a lot of omega 3s, and those things are really, really important to making sure that you stay healthy. And also the protein, what it does, and make sure that you keep your muscle because your muscle needs protein. And I tell people you don't have to go crazy with the protein, but just try to get an adequate amount. And that seems to balance everything out. And that really is the simple system that I use.
That's amazing. So, can you tell us about your 3W system of fitness? Like, what are the pillars and how do they support graceful aging?
Yeah, the three W's, like I just said,
Mm.
weight training, walking, and watching your diet. And here's what's interesting, and here's how it supports the graceful aging. So everything that I do in my program, it's done for a reason. I don't do anything that doesn't have a reasonable response for us. And so going back to the weight training, I do something called loading the muscle or time under tension. If you ever go to a gym and you watch somebody lift weights, what you'll see them do is they move the weight really fast up and down. They probably move it up in 1 second and down in 2 seconds. And they'll do 10 to 12 reps. And then they'll do 3 or 4 sets of that. And so then they'll go to another exercise and do the same thing. Now, here's the problem with that. And if you're in gym for a long time doing those things, there was a measurement, a study done, and what happened with people who did train like that, their actual exercise time was 9 minutes, just 9 minutes of actual exercise time. And for me, what I do, my workouts are 15 minutes. So I keep the muscle loaded and I have my clients do very, very slow reps, maybe 5 seconds down, 10 seconds down, 5 to 10 seconds up. And that keeps that muscle loaded for at least 60 to 90 seconds. And that's why I only do 1 set per exercise. And so then I go to the next exercise, and what I try to do is I always make sure the program is set up for what's called antagonistic muscle groups. And what I mean by that is if I do a pulling movement, the next movement I'm going to do is a pushing movement. And what that allows the muscles that were pulling, they get very fatigued. But if I go to that pushing movement, the pulling muscles are now recovering while the pushing movements are being fatigued. And here's the secondary benefit, and here's the beauty of this. Your heart rate will be elevated because people ask me all the time, well, where's the cardio in it? And the cardio is built into the workout. And what happens when you do a proper workout, it really helps your heart. Your heart rate will be up, but that's not the point. Here's the point. When you train properly, something that's called stroke volume begins to get better, meaning your heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump blood through your body. Now, once again, I've been doing this for, I've been lifting weights since I was 9 years old, and I'm 64 now. But my resting heart rate, because my stroke volume from lifting weights is so proficient, is my resting heart rate is 38 when I wake up in the morning, which is ridiculously low. I was at a doctor's appointment and the nurse came in and measured my heart rate and she ran out of the room and wanted to call an ambulance. And I was trying to explain to her, I'm like, ma'am, listen, my heart rate is always low. It's always this low. So people don't always understand that particular benefit. The number one thing you can do for anti-aging, the number one thing you could do for aging gracefully is proper weight training. That is super important. And then you need a community of people and things like that. And then the walking, as I said earlier, the walking, it just makes your life better. It just helps relieve stress. And then if you look at food as medicine, you can still enjoy food. You can eat foods that you enjoy. I enjoy the foods that I eat, but I also eat foods that are healing for my body, that are very, very good for my body. And I think that's really, really important. So those three W's are the way to age gracefully. And as I said earlier, this decline begins to happen at about age 35. If you don't do anything, you begin to lose muscle tissue. every single year, 1 to 2%. And that doesn't seem like much at first, but over 10 years, you've lost 10 to 20% of your muscle and strength. And so that's how the program works together for people who are trying to age gracefully.
Mhm. That holistic approach hits hard. Body, mind, and spirit have to
Yes.
work in harmony, especially as we age.
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It is. It is. But it's all connected. It's all interconnected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what's the biggest myth about fitness and aging that you love debunking?
The biggest myth is you have to train for a long period of time, that you have to train for hours in the gym, that your whole life has to be surrounded by that. All you have to do is you look at the book, get the book. I promise you, get it on Amazon. It became a #1 seller in 2 categories, and it will change your life. And what I mean by that is the biggest debunking thing, because when I tell my clients and they come to see me and I tell them about my workouts, they always look at me funny. And here's what I always tell I say, look, I am what I call I'm a one percenter. 99% of other trainers, 99% of fitness instructors are going to tell you something different than I'm going to tell you. And I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that this system is the most efficient anti-aging system that I've ever come across. And I still refine it. But that is where I'm at right now. I just think it is so helpful for so many people. And I get so many testimonies from people. And I've talked to doctors in podcasts who said, you know what? After listening to you, I'm going to change my workout because I can see where you're coming from and how important that is. So that is the biggest thing that I'm dealing with is just trying to get people to understand rational fitness and to get rid of the every day for hours at a time in the gym.
That's so empowering. It's about intention and consistency.
Yes, yeah, it is being very intentional and prioritizing your health. Super important.
Mm, absolutely. So, what a masterclass in mind, muscle, and mission. Steve McKinney just proved that aging gracefully isn't about holding on to youth. It's about learning into strength, wisdom, and faith with intention. So, wherever you are on your journey, ask yourself, how can I train not just for longevity, but for legacy? Stay strong, stay grounded, and remember, what your mind is right, everything else follows.